What is up? Welcome into yet another edition of Benstant Reaction, an instant reaction to anything going on in sports, whether it's a trade, a game, whatever it is. If there's breaking news in the sports world, I am jumping all over it as soon as I can. It was so funny yesterday when I got done wrapping up the Ben Garcia show. Legitimately, the breaking news of Davante Adams informing the Raiders that he prefers to be traded. So before I get to what this means, who should go after him, all that jazz when it comes to none other than Davante Adams, let me just say this. This is what drives me crazy, especially with wide receivers in the NFL. No one should feel bad for Davante Adams for the situation he has put himself in. No one should feel like that Davante Adams needs to be rescued from the Las Vegas Raiders. Davante Adams knew what he was getting himself into. And surprise, surprise, upset wide receiver that has it made with a star quarterback in Green Bay feels like he's underpaid, wants trade. Then traded, upset paid wide receiver feels underutilized due to quarterback play. This is not anything new for Davante Adams. He went from a stable organization in Green Bay that has nothing but competency, championships, and a winning organization for years on end for an organization that is a bottomless pit of failure and just a debacle of an organization. A failure organization and nothing but a loser mentality over the last 2.5 decades. That's how it feels like how long it's been for the Raiders. He knew what he was getting himself into. I do not feel bad for Davante Adams. And if I was the Raiders and I didn't get exactly what I asked for, I wouldn't trade the guy. What's the point? You have a potential out on his contract later this year. You're not exactly out of it if you're the Raiders. You're 2-2 on the season, coming off of a win last week against the Baltimore Ravens. It just doesn't seem exactly fair for the Raiders to feel like they have to adhere to all of Davante Adams' demands. So I don't feel bad for him. Surprise, surprise, if this is not a consequence of my own actions as if I'm Davante Adams. You chose the instability of the Las Vegas Raiders, who have instability at head coach constantly, head coach, general manager, the owner isn't great. No competency, no good quarterback play. The quarterback play has been atrocious for the Raiders. Whatever it is, that is what Davante Adams chose. Instead of a competent organization in the Green Bay Packers, with a front office, general manager, and head coach who are highly competent and have established a winning culture, instead of having Jordan Love or Aaron Rodgers at the time, you chose Derek Carr and the instability of the Las Vegas Raiders. This is what happens when you demand you want out because you feel underpaid. You can't have everything. And now there's talks of him wanting to go back to the Saints, which doesn't make any sense. The Saints haven't been great in forever. And of course, there is always that tie of, always and constantly that tie of Aaron Rodgers to Davante Adams. If I was the New York Jets, I would not give in to any more of Aaron Rodgers' demands. If I get exactly what I want in return for Davante Adams, if I don't have to give up too much, sure, why not? That offense needs another weapon. But do you really want to ruffle more feathers in that Jets offense? That Jets offense has issues everywhere. Garrett Wilson is upset about his role in the offense. He talked about that on radio in New York yesterday. You want to bring in another mouth to feed. Allen Lazard is getting targeted more than Garrett Wilson. Breece Hall is not being utilized correctly. They have Braylon Allen coming in out of that backfield. Not saying it's the wrong thing, just saying that you cannot continue to give in to the demands of Aaron Rodgers, who has been unsuccessful on his end of the agreement to establish a winning culture and get this team back on track. If I was the Jets, no, there's no chance I would ever give in to the demands of Aaron Rodgers. If it worked out, sure. But this should not feel like a Davante Adams, Aaron Rodgers match made in heaven. If you've been following this show, I have mentioned months ago, this is not a hot take. I'm not going to act like I'm super right on this. Everyone knew all the way down the tracks that Davante Adams was getting traded. It's a clear misstep by the Las Vegas Raiders for not doing it beforehand. There's reports now that Antonio Pierce, Davante Adams don't really get along. You have Antonio Pierce liking posts about the potential leave of Davante Adams on the Las Vegas Raiders. It's all nonsense. It's all craziness. The Bills are an interesting team to put Davante Adams on, but do you really want to add a guy who's got a $44 million cap hit both next year and the year after? That's a total of $88 million against your cap over 2 years. That is insanity. That's a contract you'll have to restructure. And not to mention, the Buffalo Bills are kind of humming on offense. Do you really want to mess up that connection? You just got rid of a diva wide receiver. Do you really want to bring in a diva wide receiver? And finally, the team that I think makes the most sense for Davante Adams, both because of his star power, because of his ability to raise the level of that offense, and the ability to help elevate the quarterback play. I think it's the Dallas Cowboys. The Dallas Cowboys missed out last year on adding a key acquisition to their team at the trade deadline, and it ended up biting them in the butt. They didn't have a great run game. Similar to this year, they don't have a great run game. They have an opportunity to give up what they need to give up to go get Davante Adams on this team. It will help elevate the offense. It will help elevate Dak Prescott. It will alleviate the pressure of being so dependent on CeeDee Lamb. And not to mention, star power of Davante Adams, that just works in Big D, being the Dallas Cowboys. They thrive for the starlight. I don't understand why they wouldn't do this. Jerry Jones is a sucker for the star. It wouldn't shock me if he gave up a second-round pick for Davante Adams. It honestly wouldn't shock me if they gave up a first-round pick for Davante Adams. That's how much Jerry Jones loves his stars. And if I'm Mike McCarthy, I'm trying to save my job. I'm trying to salvage the season. People like myself are already calling for the job of Mike McCarthy, much less the fans and the media are also doing so. If you're trying to elevate this roster, if you're trying to elevate Dak Prescott to the fullest extent, if you're trying to get everything out of the season, and if you're trying to save your job, Mike McCarthy, go get Davante Adams. It's a match made in heaven. You're in the other conference. You won't have to see him if you're the Raiders. You can give up a second-round pick. You can, at least at the bare minimum, be okay with giving that up because you're kind of desperate. And the Dallas Cowboys, they just lack star power on that team. Trayvon Diggs has got the ACL. He's not the same. Micah Parsons has been ineffective and is also injured to this point. CeeDee Lamb has been awesome, but at times is chirping on the sidelines. Dak Prescott feels like people are counting him out. The jolt in the arm that the Dallas Cowboys need is another guy to help elevate this offense and alleviate the pressure of it being so CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott dependent. You just can't have that. And I tried to explain to Dallas Cowboys fans, which at this point Brandon Cooks is missing this week's game, but I tried to explain to Dallas Cowboys fans, Brandon Cooks ain't it. He is not saving this team from anything. He is not a good enough wide receiver to help elevate this offense, and come to this point, he really hasn't. And of course, Dallas Cowboys fans nonchalantly shrugged me off, even though I had mentioned he had been on multiple different teams in multiple different years. Why are teams getting rid of such a qualified and competent wide receiver too? Maybe because he doesn't make that much of a difference. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, I am phoning this call in, and I'm doing whatever it takes within reason, with something that you can justify in getting Davante Adams. This team needs a clear shot in the arm. The Eagles have a ton of talent. The Commanders are now an up-and-coming team. And the Giants, believe it or not, are kind of competent. They're bad, but they're competent. Daniel Jones isn't awful excruciatingly this year. They've got weapons, Malik Neighbors. They've got Brian Dable, a smart head coach. If I'm the Dallas Cowboys, in order to save our jobs and salvage this season and try to make a deep playoff run that they have literally not had in over 2 decades, you have to go get Davante Adams. Don't be scared. Don't make the same mistake you did last year by not adding someone. Don't make the same mistake that you made in the offseason by not adding someone. There is a star in the making who needs, or I guess I should say, there's a bona fide star that needs a home. And your offense has not been as great as it has been in years past. Save your jobs, salvage the offense, elevate Dak Prescott, take the pressure off of CeeDee Lamb, and if you're the Dallas Cowboys, go get Davante Adams. Make it happen. This is what they need to do to help salvage their season and save their jobs.